Morning, good afternoon, everybody. We've got another exciting Holden Safari fireside chat for you today. And today's a special day because our partners in Kenya, who look after all of our safaris in East Africa, are actually out in the wilds of Kenya in the Samburu National Park. So let me introduce to you again, if you haven't already met her, Annabella Francescan, who's the chairman and founder of Manyaga Safaris, based in Nairobi. And she is, as I said, deep in the wilds of Kenya, up in the northern part of Kenya, north of Nairobi, where not many clients are brave enough to venture. But today we've got a very special guest that Annabella is going to introduce to you, who will allay any fears of heading north and excite you about the opportunities of being on safari in the north. So Annabella, welcome to the fireside chat. And would you please introduce the special guest you have for us today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Samburu land. Okay, we're here with Tom Lesarge, who is the CEO, the director of Samburu Reserve and all the conservancies in the area. And when we talk about conservancies, you're talking about areas of around 1,000 square kilometers, etc. I mean, it's just huge. The whole area is immense. And Tom runs all of these extremely efficiently to the point where we basically no longer have any poaching here, etc., etc. Today, we have been on this incredible expedition with Tom, tracking for rhinos up in the Serra Conservancy in the same area. So I won't go on too long because you really need to speak to Tom and not me. Okay, over to you, Jim.
Thank you very much, Annabella, and welcome, Tom. It's so nice of you to give us your time. I imagine you must be very busy trying to manage the park without clients contributing to the cost of trying to keep the park fresh and alive and away from poachers, etc., etc. So welcome, Tom. And would you let me ask, first of all, if you would introduce yourself, tell us where you are and your current position, if you would.
Hi, Jim. Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Lesarge, the Samburu County Government Director in charge of Samburu National Game Reserve. Currently, we are at Samburu Intrepids, which is one of the camps in Samburu National Game Reserve, with the Manyaga team from Nairobi, and we are having a time of our lifetimes.
Oh, perfect. Tell me why. Why are you having the time of your lifetime? Are those people from Manyaga being a problem? Are they leading you astray, Tom? What are they doing?
They are simply inspiring me in the work that I'm doing to protect the natural spaces that we have in Samburu for our wildlife. And we've been out and about watching elephants and lots of other species of animals, including the black rhino, which was decimated completely in the 70s and 80s around this area. But now, having been introduced by my community into one of the community conservancies, we were able to track those rhinos today and had a fantastic time with them.
Fantastic. So, Tom, before we get into the specifics of the park, would you please enlighten our viewers, our listeners, as to your background, because you're from the area. You're not coming from another part of Kenya, as I understand it. You are actually from that part. Would you please just tell us a little bit about your people, where you come from, and how you've ended up in the position you're in?
Yes, I was born not too far away from this game reserve, some few kilometers west of the game reserve, and lived most of my life just north of the game reserve, and schooled there, schooled in Samburu, primary school, secondary school, but went on to university in a different part of Kenya. but came back to work with my community, and initially started with getting my people to do a different kind of conservation of wildlife from the one that they have traditionally known. And that's why ultimately I have been appointed by the Samburu County government to run the Samburu National Game Reserve, and of course still help my community in managing the conservancies that they run.
That's a wonderful explanation of your background, Tom, and it's so nice to hear that you've gone back to the community where you were born and raised, because so many people, once they receive a university education, go on elsewhere. So it's very nice. Would you please explain again? I think most people will only think, when they think of Kenya, about the Maasai. Now, you from Samburu, and we must orientate our viewers, that is north of Nairobi, as opposed to the Mara, which is southwest, and Amboseli, which is southeast. So you are north of Nairobi in the Samburu. Please explain the cultural differences of the people in Samburu versus down in the Masai Mara, where most clients tend to go.
All right, the Samburu people and the Maasai people are basically one people. We all migrated into what is today called Kenya, along the Nile Valley, from about Egypt or Sudan, and came into what is called Kenya. And due to a severe drought, we splintered into different groups. And the Samburu tended to remain in the north, that's north of Mount Kenya, but the rest of the Ma groups migrated down to the south into currently southern Kenya and up to central Tanzania. But basically, we are one people, we have the same language, the same cultural practices, but we are simply separated in space and time. And that's why the Samburu are seen as a distinct group from the rest of the Maasai, but basically we are one people.
That's very nice. So they are your brethren, and I assume the traditions and the customs are the same, but the wildlife is completely different in many ways, isn't it? So would you please introduce the wildlife that you have up in Samburu, and why and how it's different to what people travelers might see when they go to the Masai Mara and Amboseli?
Right. Samburu is an arid zone of Kenya. The northern part of Kenya is generally semi-arid and desert, but Samburu itself is arid and semi-arid. So there are animals that are special to this part of the country, which are endemic to northern Kenya. That's only found in northern Kenya and southern Ethiopia, such as the endangered Grevy's zebra, which is bigger than the common zebra. That's found down in the south, in the Masai Mara and Amboseli. We also have a giraffe, the reticulated giraffe, which is different from the Maasai giraffe that's found down in the south. We have the Besa oryx, which is a desert animal. It's an antelope with very long lyre-like horns, and only found in dry areas. The Gerenuk, which is an antelope with a very long neck, and in fact the term Gerenuk comes from the Somali language and means long-necked gazelle. We also have the Somali ostrich, and it's called Somali because this general area is called the Somali region by taxonomists who name animals, and that's different from the common ostrich or the Maasai ostrich that is found in southern Kenya. But we also have other animals that are found down in the south, like lion, leopard, cheetah, elephants, buffaloes, and many others, including the Nile crocodile in the Wasonyiro River, which is the lifeline of the reserve out here.
Wow. So that sounds a lot for people to take in, Tom, which is a nice way to lead into my next question. So post-COVID, Tom, what we're promoting here at Holden Safaris, in partnership with Maniago Safaris, is what we call the Stay Longer, Dive Deeper Safari. And instead of trying to do the whole of Kenya in one safari in 10 days, 2 nights, 2 nights, 2 nights, what we're saying is you just choose one area, you stay there maybe in 2 lodges, 5 nights, 5 nights. So if that was the case, and we had to send somebody to the Samburu area, that whole area, the northern range, what would you, because I know part of your background is being a safari guide and also managing safari camps, what would you be advising somebody to do if they had 10 days and they wanted to spend that at different camps in the northern range? So Samburu all the way up to the north. What would you recommend? What would they do and what would they see? And why should they do it?
Right. The first stop out of Nairobi would be Samburu National Game Reserve, because it's the southern boundary of the Samburu territory. So that would be a very good introduction to Samburu. That's the largest Samburu. And of course, we have lots of wildlife in them. So lots of game drives to be done within the game reserve. But Samburu is not just Samburu National Game Reserve. I already mentioned that we have lots of community conservancies, and these community conservancies are home to lots of animals, because Samburu National Reserve, put together with those community conservancies, is the larger ecosystem that all these animals use. And elephants move in and out, gravy zebra move in and out, and all other species of animals move in and out of Samburu National Game Reserve into the community conservancies, and from the community conservancies into the game reserve. We have the black rhino, which was resident in Samburu in very big numbers, but was decimated by poachers in the 70s and 80s. But of course, some few were rescued and taken to some safe havens in other parts of the country. But we came together as the Samburu people and said the rhinos belong to us. They've always been here, and we want them back and want to take care of them. And in 2015, we introduced 10 rhino, that's 1 male, and 5 males and 5 females, and all the females have given birth. Now we have 17 rhinos altogether in an area that we purposely fenced off to promote in situ conservation of black rhino. And it's not a small area, considering that we are pastoral nomadic people who need lots of pasture for our people. We fenced off 107 square kilometers for the in situ management and conservation of black rhino. So we do rhino tracking in that rhino sanctuary, and it's a fantastic thing to do that we did today with the Maniago team. You know, walking through the bushes and with the game rangers in them and tracking those rhinos and seeing them out in the wild and experiencing that on foot, not in a vehicle. So that is a whole day experience that somebody can take. We also have issues to do with elephants abandoning babies due to poaching sometimes. Sometimes babies fall into wells that the pastoral nomadic people make, but the same pastoral nomadic people rescue those babies, and sometimes the mothers don't come back. So some community among the Samburu came together and said they would be taking care of such babies. So we have a baby elephant sanctuary just north of the reserve, about 2 hours drive. that rescues, rehabilitates, and rewilds baby elephants. And our business really is to ensure that those babies lead normal lives in the wild ultimately. And it is a very big experience going out there to see the local keepers feed those baby elephants and take care of them, nurse them just like their mothers would do, but of course in a human way. And it is a fantastic experience for every person that stays here to go and do. That's called the Reteti Elephant Sanctuary, and it is definitely an experience. But we also impart that sense of responsibility of conservation in our young people, and we engage our guests in going through schools and hearing from the children themselves what they think about conservation of wildlife, because they are the future of wildlife conservation in this country and among the Samburu people. So that's another experience, going out to local schools and learning about that. We have several organizations that run research programs, like research on elephants. Elephants, of course, are endangered. The Grevy zebra is endangered, and we have people running programs on research. We have lions that are also endangered, and we have people who do that research. And we get those specialists to come out with guests and go out specifically to look at those specific species and impart that knowledge in the guests, bring that whole research into life to those guests within the reserve and outside the reserve. Our culture, of course, is also a very big aspect, and the Samburu people are tenaciously clinging to their culture against all odds of westernization, and therefore they lead their lives as they have always led for millennia, and therefore it is a fantastic experience to go out, get together with them. The women do what the women do, the men do what the men do, go out dancing with them, eat their food if you like, and just get to learn something about the Samburu people, because that culture is extremely rich, and there's a lot that you can get from the Samburu. There's a lot of wisdom in there, and personally, I'm a writer. I document the Samburu culture, and I've already written a book on proverbs of the Samburu, and that's pure wisdom that people from other cultures can come and learn. We have fantastic landscapes out here, towering hills, and we therefore also take people out mountaineering on some hills, some sacred mountains. That is both an exercise and at the same time a cultural experience, because the Samburu people believe that their supreme being resides in high places such as those mountains, and do their sacrifices and prayers up there, and guests can partake in such things, or simply go up there and see what happens, and there will be guides out there to bring that whole experience to life. Those who are daring can go rock climbing on those mountains, paragliding, and whatever kind of adventure that they would like to do out there.
Goodness me, Tom.
Yes.
So a number of comments. First of all, the Zamburu people are extraordinarily lucky to have you as their ambassador. I'm sold. I'm coming on the next Kenya Airways direct flight from New York to Nairobi, jumping into the Manyago vehicle and driving immediately to Samburu. That sounds so fascinating. And 10 days is not enough. We got to spend a month there to do all the things.
Absolutely not.
So that is very, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot that you can do, yes, and please do come out here, and I'll be your personal guide.
Wow, Tom, we're going to take you up on that. But I have a couple of follow-up questions. First of all, just a comment. I was particularly taken with the activity you said can be done with black rhinos. There are not many places that I can think of where you can track black rhinos on foot. So that is a very, very unique and special experience to bring to the attention of our guests. So thank you for telling us that. The other thing is you mentioned community conservations. Would you explain the difference between a community conservation and a national park? Are they one and the same? Are they different? How does it work?
They are the same and different. They are the same because they all conserve the wildlife that is on our land, the Samburu land. But the National Game Reserve is directly managed by the county government of Samburu. But the community conservancies are managed and run by councils of elders chosen by the people in their different regions within Samburu. And therefore, they are the ones that run the affairs of those sanctuaries, recruit game rangers to take care of the wildlife, and therefore all the revenue that comes from that, if there is any, goes directly to the community, and it is therefore the community elders that make decisions on what to do with that. But it is just a different way of conserving wildlife, because the Samburu have been always excellent conservationists, and there is a conservation ethic in our culture where we believe that everything that's on this planet was put here by the supreme creator who also created us, and that each of them here is here for a purpose, and therefore deserves to exist just like we deserve to exist. But those of us who have gone to school and been exposed to different kinds of conservation from the traditional ones have come back with that conventional kind of conservation and sold that to our people. And they have also embraced that because it is nothing new to them, but it's just a different way of doing the same thing that they have been doing. And now there is more value they see in wildlife in terms of getting revenue that the tourists pay to watch the wildlife or do other activities out there. But that has enabled us to open up lots of tracts of land for wildlife, lots of spaces. And because of the direct involvement of the community members, it has also enabled us to flush out poachers to the point that in Samburu National Reserve, for example, we have not seen any case of poaching for years. So it is different, but at the same time, the same, because it is the conservation of the same species of animals, because they use the whole ecosystem.
Wow, I wanted to ask you about that actually, that the conservation and the anti-poaching effort. So it sounds idyllic because you've involved the community. They're going to, as you say, flush out any poachers who might be thinking that they can go into these areas and poach a rhino, for example. How is it all coordinated between the different community conservations and the national park, etc.? Is there one body that coordinates this? And what's the impact right now of no guests or very few coming to help pay the bills? How is that whole anti-poaching effort being affected right now?
All right, we coordinate between the game reserve and the community conservancies because we're basically taking care of the same animals. And the research teams map the routes of the different species like gravy zebra, the elephants, and so on. And then we have one system of radio communication where within the game reserve we call rangers in the conservancies share information. And in case of anything, you know, all of us work together to ensure that we sort out that issue. Where at the moment where there is low traffic, low tourist traffic, and therefore low revenue, the people still are committed to that conservation because it is already anyway in their cultural ethic. And the rangers are getting on with their work. We have some donations from serious people who value conservation, and that is keeping them going even without the revenue that comes to them. But we always look at ensuring that these programs become ultimately self-sustaining, and that we do by ensuring that every penny that we get is divided into two. 40% is plowed back into the operations of the conservancies, and 60% goes to some community projects such as healthcare and several others, school fees and things like that. But yes, we have donors that we work with, international conservation organizations that we work with, and even individual tourists that come out here get involved in conservation because they see that this is the foundation of the tourism that we do, and they would like their children, grandchildren, generations to come to still come and experience what they experience. So they'll be, they want to be part of that conservation story, and therefore tourists that we've had for years still contribute to the conservation of species out here, just to keep that going.
Right. Well, it's very impressive, Tom, I have to say, and congratulations to you and the community on setting up such a powerful organization to combat poaching. So congratulations. I want to ask you about the spiritual side of the Samburu. I remember being out there on an earlier safari. I'm a Maasai, I'm an older gentleman, so I do have a long history. And I remember going to a mountain that was described to me as very much part of the spiritual life of the Samburu. Ololokwe, I think, is the name, right?
Yep.
What explain to us the significance of Ololokwe and the spirituality of the Samburu people? Who is the superior being for the Samburu people?
Right. Yeah, the Samburu very, very religious people, and they believe in a supreme being called Nkai. And we believe that Nkai resides somewhere above all of us. We do not know exactly where, maybe beyond the clouds, maybe beyond the moon, beyond the stars, but somewhere above all of us, and is watching us. But at the same time, we believe that the Supreme Being is omnipresent, that's present everywhere at the same time, and all-powerful, so is seeing everything that we are doing. But Ololokwe stands very special because it's just a massive rock that juts out of some flat land and stands very tall at about 6,230 meters. It has a very big forest that has a lot of water that flows from it, and the Samburu like doing their prayers and their sacrifices in serene places, and that provides that serenity, and that's why we go up there to do our prayers, to do our sacrifices, because it is a very tranquil place, and that is what people that come here who want to immerse themselves in the culture would do, because women go up there sing songs in praise of their supreme being. The elders go chant some words, but the prayer for women is always song, and women tourists can join them, go sing and pray for whatever it is, rain when there's a prolonged drought, for example. And we do get that rain, but the essence of having prayers in a high place is because we feel that we are closer to our supreme being, and of course it's also a tranquil place.
Well, Tom, your Ngai is obviously more cooperative than our Ngai over here, because you may know we've had fires raging through California, And so our Ngai, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe it's the same Ngai and he's looking after the Samburu and he'll come back to us. But when you say it's a holy place and the ladies do their prayers singing, you remind me of another very special and unique activity up in Samburu, and that's the singing wells. Tell us a little bit about the singing wells. Is it possible to see them? Is it possible for guests to see them? And what are they singing, if we're allowed to know? Are they praying?
Right. Yes, it is possible for guests to go out to the singing wells. Of course, the wells don't sing, but the people in the wells sing as they bail out water for their animals. You know, a young man goes into a well and bails out several buckets of water into a trough for all his father's livestock. And the singing is simply serves two purposes. Purpose number one is to entertain oneself, and purpose number two is to entertain the animals and entice them to drink comfortably. So that's the reason why those men who go into wells to bail out water for the animals sing while they are in there.
Wow.
But it's also a prayer that, you know, they pray to the Supreme Being that the water they give the animals makes them healthy, that after watering them, the grass that they are going to feed the animals becomes of sustenance to them, so that they can also get something in return, which is milk and every product that comes from their cattle. So
Wow.
yes, it's possible to go and experience that.
So thank you, Tom. So we're all the same, you know, people around the world. So American farmers here in the Midwest who have large herds of dairy cattle, they've been known, these hardy backwoodsmen, to sing gentle songs to their cows so that they produce milk. So we're all the same, Tom. It's a charming story, and I know guests would be delighted to go and actually observe a singing well. Now, all good things, Tom, unfortunately have to come to an end. So before we wrap up, you mentioned your book you wrote of Samburu proverbs. I'd love us to finish this conversation, for which, again, thank you so much, with a proverb, a suitable proverb, maybe one or two. So if you would please recite a proverb. I don't know if you have your book with you or you've committed them to memory, but please recite a proverb that is in keeping with the time. So over here, we are about to go to the polls to elect our next president for the next 4 years, next Tuesday. Do you have a proverb that's suitable for us as we go to the polls?
You know, I have a proverb that is suitable for all of us in the whole world about the COVID problem that we are all experiencing. And that proverb goes, Meata nalutu nemeish. That is, there is nothing that occurs that does not come to an end. So the COVID situation will come to an end.
That's a lovely proverb. Very nice, Tom, and something for us to remember. This too shall end. So I think there's a similar expression over here that calamities don't last forever. One last thing in the few minutes remaining, you touched on the fact that there's an elephant orphanage now run by the community, Reteti, I think you said it's called, up in the north. This is very interesting because almost all our guests, as they go through Nairobi, visit the Daphne Sheldrick Elephant Orphanage in Nairobi. And to think there's another one, because I remember visiting the Daphne Sheldrick Orphanage, that many of the little baby elephants there came from the north. What you're now saying is they don't need to do that, and that the people, the Samburu people themselves, realize the importance of keeping their elephants to themselves so that they can share them in Samburu with visiting guests. Would you just enlarge on that as we close our conversation?
Yes, it is the community that decided because we are getting droughts out here, and sometimes the mothers are too weak to breastfeed their babies. They end up abandoning the babies. Sometimes a mother is too sick to keep taking care of the baby. And we've always sent all those babies to death in Sheldrick. But the community decided that they have the capacity to take care of these baby elephants. And one very interesting thing is that they decided unanimously that women are better at taking care of babies than men. So even these baby elephants should be taken care of by women. And the majority of the keepers in Reteti Elephant Sanctuary are actually women, and they do a fantastic job. And as they give those baby elephants milk, they sing the songs that they sing to their cattle when they give them water. And those babies are really soothed by that and enjoy the milk that they are given. So it is purely out of concern by the community that they started that sanctuary to ensure that they take care of their baby elephants, because it is their property, so to speak. And we are headed there tomorrow, and we're certainly going to enjoy ourselves there.
Wow. Well, I think we can all attest, Tom, and agree that women make the best keepers and carers, if you like, because of course they're the ones that bring us all into the world, and they have good practice in it, so can't disagree with that. So Tom, I want to thank you profusely for your time. You've been very generous with your time. I know it's late there in you're north of the equator, so you're actually in the same half of the world I'm in, with the equator running through Nairobi, but it's late there, I know, so I appreciate you giving us all this time. I want to thank Manyago and Annabella, and Peter is there, and Daniel is there from Manyago, who help us design our safaris and execute them and operate them so well. So we look forward to sending you more clients, more guests, Tom, to your part of Kenya. Thank you very much. And if we can just go back to Annabella, I don't know if she's still there, if she's around to sign off. If not, we can simply say good night. Is she there, or
Yes, she's there.
Okay, let's just say good night. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, Bwana Jim, bye-bye. Asante
Oh,
sana.
there's Peter. He's the managing director of Manyago Safaris. Lovely. Thank you, Peter, for setting all this up with Annabella. Is Annabella there?
Thank you, Jim, for everything. Thank you.
There's Annabella. Annabella.
Yeah. Yep. Bye-bye, everybody. Just
Jim, bye.
Okay, Daniel, Kwaheri, thank you all very much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Keep it up.
okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you all very much. Kwaheri. Asante sana.